Back for more kitchen table astronomy at the Amherst kitchen table of Hampshire College and Five College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe. While I was on my break, I did something that I know we want to do together with the creator of this, and we've pitched it a million times, and I'm speaking to you, Massimoka. We want to make it happen again. I went to see the incredible artist Laurie Anderson's immersive exhibit, To the Moon, which talks a lot about, it's first of all, beautiful, gorgeous virtual reality experience, but also brings up a lot of ideas about colonization and what it means for our heavenly body that belongs to all of us humans here on Earth. But there are two moon-related missions, one of which launched this very morning, that kind of lend itself to the what is the moon to us?
Right, well, and I may have to go. I haven't seen...
You haven't been there at all
I
yet.
haven't been
You've been
there.
waiting so that we can do it with Laurie Anderson.
Right, I have been to Massimoka many times,
Yeah.
but for this virtual reality one about ownership of the moon, I was scheduled to go actually in March of 2020, as people say. Well, remember, in March of 2020. Yeah. So this was one of those things, actually, I had reserved it. And since then they shut it down, and now it is reopened, and now we are just waiting for the invitation.
Yeah. Okay, Laurie Anderson.
No, I would love to do that, and partly because we have talked about it before. The next couple of years are going to be crucial in thinking about how humans are going to behave and how humans are going to be in space. And that is because there are a lot of missions that are going to the moon, including human space missions by NASA. So Artemis 3, so that's going to be the lander. Before that, Artemis 2, maybe this year, at the end of this year, is going to go and orbit around. But Artemis 3, maybe 2027, it's expected to land. It may get a little bit delayed. And China is also planning on going there. So there are a lot of questions about who owns the moon, hence the Laurie Anderson piece that you are talking about. A question about how to think about these questions, about the relationship between nations and private space companies, who's going there for profit. So with that big frame in mind, and we are going to be talking about these issues more and more, and because I'm interested intellectually as well, how people think about human presence in space, but also it is actually important. And if you are concerned about it, raise your voice now, because once people start doing things over there, then the question will be, well, it's the precedence. So this is the time, if you are concerned, to say something about what is the coming precedence, meaning to say, take action now. And it is in this context, there was a rocket launch just this morning, early in the morning, and this is Astrobotic Technology, which is, there is a lander that is going to the moon on a United Alliance launcher. And they are carrying 5 of the NASA instruments. They are carrying other experiments as well. The lander is going to go on the near side of the moon, so we can actually, the side that faces us, not towards the South Pole either. But it actually is carrying some of human remains, ashes, which is actually kind of cool, I have to say.
That's one of those things that's like, ooh, wouldn't it be cool to send your ashes to space?
And that is linked to, there are a couple of companies that do space burials. So, for example, Celestis, and there is Elysium Space as well. And they, if you want to send human remains, and so in this particular case, it's Gene Roddenberry's ashes.
So of Star Trek fame, creator of Star Trek. I mean, so when you hear that, you're like, oh my God, Gene Roddenberry's ashes in space, perfect.
So is Uhura, who died recently.
One of the people on the bridge.
And Scotty. And, I mean, you can actually go through that because all of them are sort of like, going there, except for William Shatner.
Who went to actual space.
Who went to actual space. So, and there are other people also, you can actually pay for that. So I think there are 70 people whose ashes are there. But also, some people's DNA is also going to be in orbit, like, with the leftover stuff.
Including
Gene Roddenberry's son, I think Eugene Roddenberry. And just for entertainment's sake, I should mention that the lander, the Peregrine lander actually, that's going to be landing on the moon that I mentioned on this mission, it's going to be land in a place called Sinus Viscositatis. Which means?
When you eat cheese from Wisconsin and it clogs up your sinuses.
There you go. So it is Latin for bay of stickiness.
I knew the moon was made of cheese.
So so I don't know whether that helps or hurts the case for sending ashes to the bay of stickiness. So it's all really interesting, and you go like, okay, that may be cool, except that right before the launch, actually yesterday or day before yesterday, the Navajo Nation actually came out and opposed that, and they actually wanted to delay the mission, partly because they think that, well, if you are putting human remains on the moon, it's going to desecrate the moon, which they consider as a spiritually an important place and things like that. Now,
because, so native burial grounds are an important conversation that happened here. Usually they think that is sacred ground when there has been remains interred and they don't want that disturbed.
Right.
So by making the moon sacred ground, they think that that would be desecrating this object that is beyond all of us spiritually, I guess, maybe?
Right, so that's where it gets complicated, right? Because you have the moon, which is important to many people. When we think about the world heritage, by the way, that is what counts as sort of like the moon is spiritually important to a lot of people. And so how do we treat that? Who gets to decide what the moon should be, right? So people have talked about, well, hey, we can put ads over there, for example.
You can project an ad onto the moon, part of Asteroid City.
Right. You can, US itself in the early 1960s thought about, using a hydrogen bomb, exploding it over there so that to send a message to the Soviets, because at that time, US was behind in space race. Who gets to decide that, right? And so there are a number of these questions, including, for example, mining on the moon. If there are human settlements, which there are expected to be, when NASA sends, or Artemis program, when they send astronauts or Chinese astronauts, it will be there for a permanent settlement over there. It's not going to be like Mars, where there are millions of people, but it's going to be a permanent presence over there. More like, maybe perhaps like Antarctica. Nevertheless, if you are there, you are using that. How does that mean? How are you going to carve out places over there? Are you going to be living in there? How are you going to be living in there? So on and so forth. Who gets to decide that? So right now, a lot of these things are governed by the only space treaty. This is the space treaty, outer space treaty, that was signed in 1967, before even the first landing on the moon. So right now, the questions are, what is governed by the Outer Space Treaty? Because sometimes it is a little bit ambiguous. One of the reasons why all the countries actually signed it was because of some loopholes that were in there. So for example, no nation can own any piece of the heavenly bodies, including the moon. But what does that mean, own? And what if you mine something, and so on and so forth? So those questions are coming up. This particular mission is just one of the first missions this year. Right now, there is a Japanese mission which is going to be landing on the moon, I think, at the end of this week. That mission is demonstrating that you can actually accurately land on the moon. Their target is basically a football field. And it's because it's very hard to target, because moon has rocks, moon has the landings can be tricky, including the famous Neil Armstrong landing, actually, that towards the end he had to actually manually take control and actually landed it over there. So can you do that? Because it will have cameras over there, right over there, you are actually maneuvering it, and so the target is, it's demonstrating you can land very narrowly. And then you have another mission being launched in mid-February, which is also going to the moon. That is going to the south, towards the South Pole, more south than where Indian mission Chandrayaan-3 landed. So it's going even a little bit south of that. And that is, again, that's a company called, it will have a lander called Astroforge, and it's going to land up there. But that particular lander, or that particular mission, is also carrying another spacecraft that is going to an asteroid, near Earth asteroid, a small asteroid, about probably around smaller than 300 feet. But Monte, you're going to ask, hey, which asteroid is that?
Which asteroid is that?
Great question, Monte. We don't know. because the company, and it's a private company, they have not disclosed the name. They're keeping it secret. And I think it may be partly a PR thing, but nevertheless, what they are saying is they want to test out mining over there. So this is a metal-rich asteroid, and they don't want to give their competitors an edge beforehand. And so they said, well, we are going to make it public, but not right now. So this is, again, an interesting question. Wait a minute. You don't have to announce, you are sending a mission to the solar system.
With some nations, which nation again? Lander?
Well, so this one is the U.S. So this is a U.S. mission, and it's saying and there is a private company that has another a spaceship in it that's going to go to an asteroid, but they don't have to disclose which asteroid it's going to. And I think because the rules are not clear, and so I think this is where the private companies, how they interact with the nations. I mean, I think that becomes really important. But a lot of astronomers are a little bit upset about it, and the reason is because these metal-rich asteroids are actually scientifically really important because they hold clues. We think that some of these metal-rich asteroids were formed. They're sort of like leftover cores of protoplanets, and so we think that they can actually provide clues about the conditions in the early solar system. There is a NASA mission to such an asteroid on its way, actually. That's the Psyche asteroid, but it's going to take, I think it's going to get there in 2029. This mission actually is going to go there within a week, the Astroforge mission that I just mentioned, and it's because it's looking for an asteroid that is actually pretty close by. It is within sort of reach, as to say, and eventually, who knows what they're going to do, but my guess is that this is their first mission to test out what can be done in terms of mining. But eventually, I can imagine that what they would try to do, or somebody would do, is to bring asteroid close to the Earth, to actually use...
tow it to the Earth?
My guess would be eventually, and those are harder technologies, but that's what would be the ideal conditions, ideal situations, because then you don't have to haul the material all the way from farther away. But of course, then you better make sure that when you are towing it, you are not actually tow it too close to the Earth, so on and so forth. Fascinating questions, but none of this is science fiction. This is happening, and there are some serious concerns as well. I mean, there is always this balance between, hey, this is really cool, to, oh, wait a minute, how should we think about it? And I think we really have to figure out the balance in there, and we have to get engaged. And as citizens of this planet as well, not just citizens of the US, but citizens of this planet as well, we should engage more with these things. This thing is coming. Artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, that is a great example where I think people reacted a little later. It's like, oh my goodness, this is already there. With the space aspect, with commercial space, this is happening, but we can still, especially on issue of the moon, we can still raise our voices if you have concerns. What kind of concerns you should have without diminishing the excitement. I think excitement part is there, but it's far better and far more exciting if the excitement is done in a respectable way, which makes everybody happy.
And if you want to take a local look at these issues from an artistic standpoint, going out to Mass MoCA in North Adams, sign yourself up for the virtual reality experience To the Moon, created by Laurie Anderson. I won't spoil it for you because still...
Don't spoil it. But I should mention there is one other local connection too with this current mission, because Douglas Trumbull, the special effects person for Kubrick, for example, in 2001: Space Odyssey.
He also did my friend's film, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot.
And Alien, I think, and all of those sort of great sort of visionary. His ashes are also on the...
Are on this moon mission? Oh, well, I think I'm going to let this one go then.
So there is a lot of local connection.